Vladimir Putin is going to be offered land that he has not seized yet, but negotiates his way into, doesn't this set a dangerous precedent that the United States now accepts this concept that it is okay to seize land by force?
Well, Putin's already seized land by force, and that in and of itself is not a positive precedent. This whole war
is a negative precedent. Are you demanding a withdrawal?
Precedent. Well, again, in order to have a deal here, to reach the end of this conflict, both sides are going to have to make concessions. That's just a fact.
Does that mean
in any negotiation,
where Russian forces are now?
But this is not about acceptance. This is about what Ukraine can accept and what Russia can accept. They both have to accept it. Otherwise, there won't be a peace deal. Okay? If there aren't concessions, if one side gets everything they want, that's called surrender. That's called the end of the war through surrender. And that's not what we're close to doing, because neither side here is on the verge of surrender or anything close to it. So in order for there to be a peace deal, this is just a fact. We may not like it. It may not be pleasant. It may be distasteful. But in order for there to be an end of the war, there are things Russia wants that it cannot get, and there are things Ukraine wants that it's not going to get. Both sides are going to have to give up something in order to get to the table, in order to make this happen. That's just the way it is. And I mean, the sooner we accept that, that's the reality. Now, what those things are is going to be up to both sides. There's no conditions that can be imposed on Ukraine. They're going to have to accept things, but they're going to have to get things too. And so, for example, Ukraine is a sovereign country. They have a right, like every sovereign country does in the world, to enter into security alliances with other countries to prevent an invasion in the future, to prevent threats to their national security. That's not an unreasonable request. That's something that needs to be worked on. Territories will have to be discussed. It's just a fact. And there are things that maybe Russia's holding now that they're going to have to give up. Who knows? The point is, we need to create a scenario where that becomes possible. And that's why this has been so hard, because neither side up to now has been willing to give on some of these things. But we'll see if that's possible. It may not be, but we're going to try, and we're going to do everything we can to try to achieve a peace.
I understand you can't get into specifics in a public conversation, but we're looking at Russian troops and strikes intensifying. Did you hear anything from Vladimir Putin that indicated he is willing to make a single concession?
Well, I think there are a couple. I mean, they were not enough for Ukraine. If not, we would be announcing a peace deal this morning, right? But certainly there are some things we noticed changes. There are some changes that I think are possible. I think there's some concepts that were discussed that could potentially lead to something. But again, all these things have to be verifiable. It isn't real until it's real. I mean, one thing is what you say you might be willing to consider. Another thing is your willingness to do it. And it always becomes a trade-off in all of this. But you talk about the intensifying strikes on the Russian side. Yeah, I mean, they're full-time war machine. I mean, that's what's happening. The Russian economy has basically been turned into a full-time wartime economy. They have a lot of people. It's a big country. It's not just large geographically. It has huge populations. It continues to churn through people. They lost 20,000 Russian soldiers were killed last month in July in this war. That just tells you the price they're willing to pay. Not saying any of this is admirable. I'm saying that this is the reality of the war that we're facing. It's become attrition in some ways. It's a meat grinder, and they just have more meat to grind.
Well, let me ask you about the security that you just mentioned there, because Italy's prime minister says that President Trump revived the idea of security guarantees inspired by NATO's Article 5 and a collective security clause that would involve the United States. How does that work? Are these U.S. troops? Are these U.S. monitors?
Well, that's what we're going to be working on. That's one of the reasons why, I talked yesterday to all the national security advisors, a bunch of them from the different European countries. There are European leaders coming here tomorrow, heads of state coming tomorrow, along with President Zelensky, to discuss this in more detail. I mean, the constructs of something like this needs to be built out. It's a concept is one thing. The reality, how it's built and how it would work is another. But those are the kinds of talks that we're going to be having with them, along with some of the other issues that are at play. But that is one of the, if you were to break this thing down, I mean, obviously there needs to be an agreement on territories and where the lines are going to be drawn. That's not going to be very easy. That's going to be tough. I think there has to be some discussion about security guarantees for Ukraine, because they don't want this war none of us want to see this war in the future. They're a sovereign country. They have a right to have security agreements with other countries and security alliances with other countries. And then there's the whole issue of reconstruction. How do you rebuild the country? Well, potentially, like I said, that's what we're going to be having a conversation about, and that's what we're going to be meeting. That's why they're all coming here tomorrow, and that's why we've been talking on the phone for the last 48 hours with them, and even leading up to it throughout the week, there were various meetings just to sort of build out some of these ideas. So all of these right now are ideas, they're concepts that require some more specificity. We'll need to work with our partners to see what that looks like. And I think that's an area where potential progress is real, but that alone won't be enough. There's a bunch of other things that have to be worked through here.
Yeah, well, Russia